Today I played Pokemon Fused Dimensions, a game full of fusion abominations, which is absolutely amazing, but there is also another very cool thing about this game, and that's the amazingly high shiny odds. And today we'll be trying to capture every single one of the Pokemon in this game, but they have to be shiny. There are 226 new creatures available, so even with the increased shiny odds, this will still take me quite a long time to complete. Also, a little editor's note, apparently there is now a new version of this game with 150 new Pokemon. So if you'd like to see me take on the next update of this game as well, and capture even more fusion forms, let me know by smashing that like button and hitting 12,000 likes. With all of that out of the way, let's go do some shiny hunting. I decided to mix my own name with shiny and came up with Shigo, which did not sound good at all, but we rolled with it anyway. Oh yeah, and also meet Fred, our rival. At the start of the game, we get to pick between 2 amazing shiny Pokemon and 1 absolute abomination. Since in my last 2 videos of Fused Dimensions I went with the water type and grass type starters, this time I'll be going with everybody's favorite fire type, as well as everybody's favorite psychic type, Raltmander. And just like regular Ralts, it actually has 2 forms, a Gallade and a Gardevoir form. And as well as 2 Megas, X and Y. So getting one of them out of the way already is going to be very helpful at the start. It didn't really take me that long, only about 5 resets to get my shiny, but now we can start scouring the rest of the region. First we lose to our rival because he had Water Gun. Then we went to pick up Professor Oak's parcel, and as I was walking back, I already ran into a shiny Lilifa which I couldn't capture, as I don't even have Pokeballs yet. I then went to Professor Oak, scolded at him for not giving me the balls earlier, and in return he gave me my Pokedex, some balls, and the opportunity to capture my first shiny ever, Lilifa. Definitely not my favorite shiny, but hey, it's something we can already cross off the list. On the same route we also capture a shiny Bonelga, and those were the only Pokemon available on Route 1, so we headed on over to Victory Road, but saw that was closed. So instead, I walked around in the grass there a little bit and found a Citata first. I know, most of these fusions really don't look too cool yet, but don't worry, once we evolve them and get further into the game, the cooler the fusions will get. On the same route though, we also grab a blue Electran, a golden green Balky. That was everything I got on this route. I decided to also take a revenge on my rival because he has humiliated me once and that's more than enough. In Viridian Forest, I found my next shiny, a Weebra, which teleported away. Nothing I could do about that, so I just went at it again and found another one, as well as a Shrew-Ras and a Caterfield. That was everything I could find before we arrived at our first gym leader, Brock, and even though he had a lit dude and we had a weak starter to his entire team, we still really didn't have any problems taking out most of his Pokemon, as I scorched this entire gym to the ground in a matter of seconds. On round number 3, I grabbed an Ixoril, which was purple, and then also an Apoth, which didn't really change much from his regular form. Then it was time to enter the Zubat-infested Mount Moon. Luckily, this time it was infested with amazingly looking lit dudes, so I picked up one of those, and also one of the most beautiful shinies in the game, Beltru. We then had our first ever evolution, Raltmander into Charmeleon, and our Lilo evolved into her fairy. In my opinion, probably the worst Pokemon, not only shiny, in this game. I don't really like its design whatsoever. But that doesn't matter because there are more than enough amazing Pokemon like this shiny Captata I got, this red shiny Geonedge, which I know a lot of you are going to love as well, and then a purple Roggenchop. Then I finally made my way out of Mount Moon and reached Route 4, where I did not learn Mega Punch or Mega Kick, but I did find an Ekacham. With that easy capture out of the way, we can finally head on over to Misty. And with our amazing grass-type Tangler and our equally amazing electric-type Sparky, this bikini girl stood no chance against me as I walloped her entire team. With our second gym badge in hand, we also showed Sparky's power against our rival by shockwaving through everything he could send out, and then headed over the Nugget Bridge, walked into the grass over there, and grabbed a couple more shinies. But before I found my first one, Sparky evolved into Manacarino. In the grass, on the other hand, I found a really cute Piddish, a menacing Elgisir who looks more alien than LGM himself. That was everything I could find on these 2 routes, so I went to our favorite researcher's house, Bill, picked up the SS ticket, and went to the baby maker route. On this route I found 2 more Pokemon, namely Jiggrill, which we already have the pre-evolution of, but it will just save us an evolution to do, so I grabbed that thing, as well as a Meowbapus. He definitely seems ready for a fight, but we're not ready to take on our next battle yet. First I head to Vermilion City to grab the Old Rod and fish up a shiny Dwebder. Then I went to Diglett's Cave to find, you know it, some Diglett fusions. Namely a shiny Dignia and Chandler Binglet. Then we went over to Route 11 to grab a white Woolita, who reminded me of that one Disney horse. And we also grab a very disgusting Picloom. Those were the last encounters I could grab here, so let's hop on the SSN and show Fred the power of our newly evolved Sparky by biting his ass with some thunder. Just like always, we show the captain that we're the best masseur around, but that's enough messing around for a little bit. Let's show Lieutenant Surge that we're more than capable of defeating him, since I play quite a lot of Call of Duty. We could have used one of the Diglett fusions that we just got in Diglett's Cave, but we didn't even need any of them. Charmeleon with Psybeam and Flamethrower was more than enough to carry me through the fight, since his 2 aces were part poison and grass, so they were just wiped off the map. 3 gym badges acquired. Before we head into the darkest hellhole of this entire game, the Rock Tunnel, we first capture a couple more Pokemon on round 9. Namely a Voltrubi, which is blue, so I love it, and also a shiny Farokuda. Shortly after, our Weebra evolved into a Cacdabra, and then we entered Rock Tunnel without Flash, since we got big balls. And with that, I of course mean the Voltrubi we just captured. We found a lot of new Pokemon which we hadn't seen before in Rock Tunnel, like Tertauzi, a Rock Rogue, a Solonix, and a Braixena. And in the same place, we also did a couple of evolutions. Charmeleon evolved into Gardevoir, Cacdabra also immediately evolved into Beedrazam, and last but not least, Balki into Claymape. I don't forget about the rival battle in Pokemon Tower this time, but still, we just throw out his biggest nightmare, Sparky, and do the same as we always do. And now's a great time to ask, what is going to be your favorite Pokemon in this video? Please let me know once you've watched the entire thing, because I don't think I can personally choose a favorite among all these cool shiny fusions. But I can choose my least favorite one though, that's this boy right here, Stout Fable. Rock Rogue then evolves into Lycanly, and yes, there are also 2 more evolutions to this evolutionary line, I guess, but we will get them later in the video. First, I go to Route 7 to pick up a Laranat and also a Volpua, and I absolutely love the black and blue coloring on this one. We then eventually arrive in Celadon City and pick up a bunch of evolutionary stones in the Pokemart there. And with the Thunderstone, we can finally evolve our Sparky into Main King. Sadly enough, we have to say goodbye to Lidude, who evolves into Lampeler, and also turns from an amazing shiny into a pretty bad one in my opinion. Caterfield also evolves into Metaleo, and despite the metal in his name, he's not a steel type. And then Dignia also turns into Duckturn. On round 16, I found 2 more Pokemon. Smootiny, definitely a forgettable Pokemon, but the next one is definitely not forgettable, Abduo. Even though I prefer its regular form over its shiny one. With these 2 bad boys added to the dex total, I headed on over to Erika, and Gardevoir showed its flamethrower and set fire to the entire gym, since everything seems to be made out of grass. We still made it out alive with our gym badge, and then I went to the top of one of the buildings to reset for my shiny Eevee, which turned out to be a shiny Madinja. We then do 1 more evolution, Metaleo into Butterain, who doesn't really look too happy, and then it's time to take out the Mafia. And even though he has an entire ground type team who's normally like weak to water or grass or something, this time they were all weak to fire. So just like Erika's gym, we burned down Giovanni's entire cooperation. And as we run out of the burning building, we snag the Silph Scope and evolve our Geonej into Grablade. With this Silph Scope, we can finally see ghosts, and apparently they turn into Cupcada. Finally, Cubone doesn't seem as sad anymore. In the same Pokemon Tower, we also grab a Mask, as well as a Duscgone and its evolution, Duscgone 2. As we take all of the T-Rocket Grunts out at the top, our Tertauzi evolves into a pink Carapno, and he seems to have turned into a ninja because look at that weapon. We then get some musician lessons from Professor Fuji, namely in playing the flute, but we didn't even capture the Pokemon that we woke up with it. Nope, first we evolved our Dwebder into Croyster, whose shiny gets significantly worse. I then pick up the Super Rod as well, to fish up a shiny Gasky as well as a shiny Sabini. I then found a new item called the Link Cable, which evolved evolves Pokemon that are normally stuck behind trading. With this new item, we grabbed ourselves a Golslash and a Chandelum, and the way I got these link cables was from catching Dusgons because they hold them as a held item in the wild. On Route 12, I grabbed a Zublu and a Goldaria, which both were actually gold as well, and they made me rich. With even more shiny evolutions, Dusgong 2 evolved into Dusgon Z, which was a pretty underwhelming shiny. Abduo turned into Abdrio, Cupcada into Majorask, and once I reached Fuchsia City, I went to pick up the Good Rod and did a bunch more fishing, picking up a Barbanite, which was purple, and an Abomination, and 2 Clampcutes as well because it has 2 evolutions. The last Pokemon I found here was a Meowpider. Probably one of the weirdest combinations of Pokemon, but hey, those need to be there too. Now it was time for the hardest section in this entire video, the Safari Zone. Not only am I on a step limit, I'm also on a ball limit, and Pokemon can run away. And every single area has a 1% encounter Pokemon that's really rare to find, so I spent multiple hours in the Safari Zone. But the results were amazing, because it's home to some of the coolest fusions in this entire game, starting out with a Chimsprout, then going to a Turtmite, as well as a Happin, a Pitchick, as well as a Scourjunior, a Bulbcore, and finally a Silet. And this was only the first area of the Safari Zone without the water encounters. And yes, this entire area was full of starter fusions. Then I went over to the water type area and found a Snikarp, as well as a Horseta. The final Pokemon I found here was an Aerobrawl, and then I went to pick up the HM for Surf, and even though we hadn't even picked up half of the Pokemon in the Safari Zone, I still wanted to give myself a little rest. So I went to Koga's gym and did some evolutions. Those were Gasky into Houngadir, Sabini into Drizzair, and Smootany into Jinzakot, who's got a nice pink dress. Since our starter was part Psychic type, Koga himself was really not a big threat to me, as I was bulldozing through his team with Psybeams. But then his Apple King came out, and that thing was just a little bit too strong. Luckily, we had a bunch of stuff in the bag that could help us out, as Golbaria could come in, Dragon Pulse it, and win me my 5th gym badge. I knew my time in the Safari Zone wasn't over, so I had it back there, grabbed a second Raltmander to get that Gallade fusion, as well as a Tothorn that looks like something that could come straight out of Digimon, as well as a very cute little Petipix. I then found my last starter of the trio in this game, Squirron. Apoke also has 2 evolutions, so we pick up 2 of those, and Apoke is a little bit of an underrated shiny. I actually really like it, even though I really didn't use it that much. And the last thing I picked up in the Safari Zone before leaving was a Tentazor. Then I went to the Seafoam Islands, which is infested with new Ice-type fusions. Over here we evolved our Petapix into Lilytails with an Ice Stone, and we do our first Picloom evolution into Rylossom with a Sunstone. In the Seafoam Islands themselves, we grab a Globro, who looks very, very mad, as well as his pre-evolution Snowpoke. But this wasn't everything yet, we also found a Cedo, a Sablu, as well as its evolution Sap Slash. I didn't think Cupchew could become any more cuter, but then they introduced me to Munchu, and the final Pokemon I found here was a Snogbee. With that entire batch of shiny Pokemon out of the way, there were bound to be some evolutions. So we evolved Volpua into Ninetark. Sadly enough, it does lose its blue color for a purple one, but it still looks as good as ever. Mr. Grigas then also joined the battle. I hope he doesn't haunt you in your sleep, but this Pokemon probably will. Greninja. But we aren't done there. Shruras also evolves into Brelsect, and Steven into Metru. We skipped through the entirety of Silph Co, so let's head over there now by taking on all of the Team Rocket grunts and eventually ending up on Fred's floor. He's here to try and stop us, but that's not gonna happen, as Gardevoir set aflame his first 3 Pokemon, but then his starter was just a little bit too much for me. Luckily, we had Arrow Brawler in the back who could Power Punch it to death and take out the rest of his Pokemon with a Rock Slide. Shortly after, I decided to use a Moonstone on him, and he evolved into Aerobominable, a big upgrade from its regular version. I know a lot of people don't like Crabominable, but I actually think it's pretty damn cool. Just like last time, we set the entirety of Giovanni's team aflame and showed up to the director of this company to get a free Master Ball, which we probably won't even use since there isn't like any major major legendaries we have to capture. But we do have to take on one more major thing before grabbing some more Pokemon, and that's Sabrina's gym. With the combined efforts of Gardevoir, Drizzare, and Golbaria, she stood no chance against my core team. Don't get me wrong, she definitely put up a fight and almost took down 2 of my Pokemon, but we still came out on top. With that 6th gym badge out of the way, Golbaria finally decided to evolve into Crobaria, and then we surfed our way to Cinnabar Island. On the way grabbing 1 shiny Bassfetched and then entering the Pokemon Mansion, which is filled with Pokemon that we haven't captured yet because they're only available in here. And yes, most of them are poison types. Starting out with a shiny Koffling, rolling into a Stunkung afterwards, then finding everybody's favorite Gridoof. Then we found a shiny Silicobra that just smoked a little bit too much, a shiny Bergmer and its evolution Avaluk, and the hardest Pokemon for me to find was actually this one. What happens when you try to clone a Mew and a Ditto? Well, you get Miato. Even though it has a very cool looking shiny, it's still suffering from all the pain that it's in. Luckily, we just put it in the PC, never to be used again, so it's not suffering anymore. And just before we take on Blaine, we do a couple more evolutions, namely Snogby into Abomar, and then immediately into Abomortar. Also, sadly enough, one of my least favorite fusions. It would probably be better with Abomasnow's fusion colors. Jiggrill then evolved into Wiggeril. I evolved Apoke into one of his evolutions, namely Flabro, who looks like something that could come out of Mario. And then Cedo into Dewgoat. With those evolutions out of the way, let's see what Blaine has in store for us. He has a Heatom, an Abomar, and a Furcargo, who all go down by my Gardevoir Psychics, but his final Pokemon is a Mega Pidgeotto, who's somehow able to take out my Gardevoir. Luckily, we still have Drizzare in the back, and with a single Surf, we can finally wash away Blaine. Right after the battle, our Apoth evolves into Ambician, who's not a big upgrade from the regular Ambipom to be honest, and Horsita evolves into Sea Leaf. And now I'm gonna do something that I normally never do in my Pokemon Fire Red and Leaf Green videos, the Sevii Islands. And that's actually because there are a bunch of Pokemon available there that are not available on the mainland here. So let's go and add all of them to the Pokedex. We first start out by capturing a Dubidash, and then at Mount Ember we grab a Furcargo for ourselves. Then we go to the top of Mount Ember, because I really wanted to see what Moltres would have turned into. And apparently, it's just a Feralior. I still reset it for a shiny though, because this will save me some time grinding up his first evolution. Once we captured him, we did a bunch of evolutions, namely Drizzare into Inteleite, Steven into Metaslash, Squirron into Wartron, Snikarp into Servados, and then I went to the other 2 islands to grab even more Pokemon, starting out with an Electrim who, ironically enough, doesn't even have a good trim. We also grab a second Apoke, and we also defeat an Apoke because he was harassing this little girl. Once we then do the entire side quest and get the PC up and running again, we then return to Kanto. And once again, before taking on the next gym leader, we first evolve a couple more Pokemon, starting out with Sealeaf into Kinganium, Clamcute into Huntator, and another Clamcute into Gorbuter, and finally Koffling into Wheezemeko. For some reason, 4 out of the 5 Pokemon that Giovanni owns are still weak to Flamethrower, so we took out all of them, even his Mega Metaslash, who ironically looks worse than regular Metaslash, and finally his Wistar with a Psychic or 2. Final gym badge acquired, we now head on over to Victory Road, and of course set our rival on fire on the way there, but the experience we got from defeating him evolved our Cofcobra into Weezconda. We show all of the guards our badges, and just before we enter Victory Road, we capture an Argoro in the grass in front of it, and do 2 more evolutions, Tothorn into Crocodon, and Happen into Chanladin. With these 2 out of the way, we have a lot more captures to do in the cave itself, so let's start out with Purlocked, a polished shiny gold Pokemon that I gladly added to the dex total, as well as a Kabucate, and this Pokemon might be my favorite. It's really hard to choose, but Boltchoke has such a clean design with the purple body and the blue highlights on its crystals. I think this is my favorite shiny fusion. But this isn't the final thing I captured in Victory Road. Nope, that was Duolix, who surprisingly enough is not the final evolution yet. Speaking of evolutions, let's take on the Elite Four about 1,000,000 times so that we can evolve all of our boxes. First, we grab ourselves a Giga Chad, or should I say Giga Champ. followed by a Volcamoth. Once it spread its beautiful yellow wings, we then evolved Celadon into Blissknot, Meowpider into Proquanid, who's an absolute abomination, Stunkung into Skunglicky, one of the coolest Pokemon in this game, Servados into Serprados, a meme Pokemon Gridove into Muckar, Chimpsprout into Monferbel, Barbonite into Wistar, Ferrocuda into Surscuda, Bulbcore into Ivyguard. Sadly enough, we have to evolve Chandler Binglet into Barbtrio, Turtmite into Grotneaton, and he definitely looks like he's suffering from something, Monferbel into Inferbel, who actually looks better than I would have expected, Pitchick into Pitbuskin, Duolix into Reuniclix, definitely don't want to run into this Pokemon anytime soon, Ivyguard then also evolves into Veniguard, Pitbuskin into my very own Pidgeotkin, Grotneaton into Tortazone, Score Jr. into Mr. Boot, Silette into Citrix, Braixina into Delqueen, Citrix then into Sidgewai, who would probably look better with the Decidueye's shiny coloring, Tentazor into Tentazong, who's ready to pinch you with, I don't even know what those are, Look away if you don't want nightmares tonight, Elgisair into Beheaser, Mr. Boot then evolves into Mr. Ace, and these guys definitely win the crown of the best names in Pokemon history, rivaling even the likes of Cloth and Lechonk. Munchoo then also evolves into Snortic, and then I was done with running through the Elite Four a bunch of times, because I wanted to scour the region and capture every Pokemon that I still needed, because I had forgotten quite a few. Starting out at the power plant and capturing myself a second Picloom there. I also captured 7 Eevetoms because, just like a regular Eevee, this one has 7 evolutions. I also found a shiny Girdbuzz and its pre-evolution Timpkid. With the Link Stone, I evolved this Girdbuzz into Conkeldurr, and this might actually just be my favorite regular fusion Pokemon, because I love Electivire, and they did an amazing job fusing it with a Conkeldurr. I then evolved my Picloom into a Riplume with a Thunderstone, did all of my Eeveelutions so I could get Heateon, Rovion, definitely the funniest one of them, Motion, but we also get Fanneon, Washion, another Rotion for some reason, but this time it's a Leafeon fusion. And the last two were Dexion and Frostion. Let me know which your favorite of these 7 was. Mine was probably the Jolteon one, even though I also really enjoyed that they used the Dex form of Rotom. I then did the other 2 Rockrogue evolutions, so he evolved into Lycanchamp and also into Lycantop. Then I went back to the Safari Zone because there was quite a few Pokemon I missed here actually. Starting out with a Lindeen, which was a fishing encounter, but also its evolution, Crady King, and another surfing encounter in Ruffyu. I actually had to capture a bunch of these Ruffius because they hold Dawnstones, and they're not available to get anywhere else. But once I had enough of these Dawnstones, I could do a bunch more evolutions. So that way we got ourselves a Braviarmy, a Frost King, finally a Galazard, and Apoke evolves into Apple King with a Duskstone, not a Dawnstone. We only had one more Pokemon to go before we completed our entire Pokedex. And this one, you guessed it, was also in the Safari Zone, and it was a Kragascan. One of the more rare Pokemon in the Safari Zone, but not necessarily the rarest. It did take me some time to find one, but once I got it, it actually didn't even look that great. But I lobbed my balls at it and added my last piece to my puzzle. I went to Professor Oak to let him check my Pokedex, and I know he doesn't say I've captured 226 Pokemon. He only says 143, but that's because the Pokedex in this game is actually glitched. It doesn't show every single fusion Pokemon, only 143 of them. But don't worry, I recounted and checked everything. I have captured every single shiny Pokemon in fused dimensions. But Professor Oak does also congratulate me by saying I have nothing left to say, you're the Pokemon professor now, and that really honors me. I decided to take out the league one last time with Gardevoir as well, because I actually haven't defeated the Pokemon League yet. Yes, I've run through it multiple times, but I always died at Agatha or Lance. And now that my Gardevoir is a high enough level, we could finally show Fred that we're the ultimate shiny Pokemon collector. And so we end the video on 69 hours of in-game playing time, which is actually not that much, considering I had to capture every Pokemon and they had to be shiny. I'll let you look through my boxes one last time as I end off the video here. I had an absolute blast playing through Pokemon Fused Dimensions again. And who knows, maybe I'll play through it again if you guys smash that 12,000 like goal, so that I can check out those 150 other forms. Before we end off here, let me know what you would like me to do next, and also let me know if there is any more cool ROM hacks you would like me to check out. As always, I want to thank my membership and Patreon supporters for supporting the channel. If you want to do so yourself, you can click the links in the description. It's always appreciated, but of course not needed. And with all of that out of the way, don't forget to leave a like, subscribe, and share this video with your friends. I'm Zwiggo, and I'll see you guys next time.